Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark. And in this episode, I'm joined by co-hosts Phil Lindsey and Chris Mueller. From the Marvel Cinematic Universe comes one of the most legendary heroes of all time, struggling to survive in a world that now knows his secret identity and eventually thrust into multiversal chaos after enemies from other worlds seek to destroy him. We're talking about Spider-Man: No Way Home. Spider-Man: No Way Home was released in the United States on December 17, 2021. Co-produced by Marvel Studios and Columbia Pictures, it was distributed by Sony and was directed by John Watts on a story by Chris McKenna and Eric Summers. No Way Home begins immediately after the events of 2019's Far From Home, which saw Spider-Man battle the villain Mysterio, who framed the web slinger for his ultimate demise, and in the process revealed to the world that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Peter, now running from the press and seeking to somehow put his life back together, is assisted by Happy Hogan and Aunt May, both of whom seek to protect him from the media. Peter is also in trouble with Damage Control, a government agency that wants information about his activities as Spider-Man. After Peter, his girlfriend MJ, and his best friend Ned Leeds all fail to get into MIT because of Peter's secret identity, the hero decides to enlist the help of Doctor Strange. Strange attempts to cast a spell that will cause the world to forget that Peter is Spider-Man, but after the process goes awry due to Peter's interference, the ensuing fallout opens doors to the multiverse. Spider-Man is then forced to battle villains from other worlds, all of whom know a different version of the hero. The Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Electro, the Sandman, and the Lizard are all out for revenge until Peter decides to try and help cure each one of them before sending them back where they belong. Spider-Man: No Way Home was immediately met with rave reviews from critics and fans alike, who praised the film for its character work, spectacular action, and various surprise cameos throughout the movie. To date, it has earned a worldwide total of nearly $1.4 billion on a budget of $200 million, making it the highest-grossing film of 2021 and the 12th highest-grossing film of all time. Following much speculation as to the future of the Marvel and Sony joint effort on the franchise, plans for a second Spider-Man trilogy were revealed in December of 2021. Spider-Man continues to be one of the most popular characters in the MCU. Thanks to the response to the latest chapter of the story and the fans' desire to see the characters in the future, Spider-Man is sure to be back on the silver screen, bigger and better than ever. And that's the lowdown on Spider-Man: No Way Home. The third M on the 6M is Marvel. I think everybody pretty well knows that by now. It's on the description. You can look at it right there. We gush about Marvel all the time here on the pod. And sometimes my intros are a little bit more subtle, but I'm not doing that this time because we got a great movie to talk about here today. And it is Spider-Man: No Way Home. And I'm telling you, if you haven't seen it by now, I'd like to know the size of the rock you've been living under, number one. Number two, we're going to spoil the living daylights out of this thing. So if the internet hasn't killed it for you, we're about to. So just be forewarned, kids. Be forewarned that it's about to get spoiled. This, of course, is the third chapter in the MCU's edition or version of Webhead himself, the Tom Holland Spider-Man, as we have come to know and love. And we had a couple of, well, not more than a couple of huge surprises in this film. Depending on how much of spoilers that you wanted beforehand, you had it spoiled like crazy, or if you tried to stay away from like I did, and hopefully like Chris and Phil both did, you didn't get too deep in the weeds on what was being said. It was amazing. I'll say that out the gate, pun intended. I loved this movie. I'm here for this film. Phil, before we started recording here today, you said you've already seen it a second time. Does it do as much for you the second time as it did the first time?
I think certain aspects of it do. But as we talked about before I got on, I think certain parts of the movie going experience were so distracting the second time that it was like, what's going on?
Yeah, so it was kids this time, right? Teenagers
It,
specifically.
it
What is the concept of, like you said, I'm going to buy a ticket and sit here and talk during the entire film? Who does that?
it wasn't just that. It was just like people just like turning on their phone and having like their flashlight on the screen, and just it
Oh.
was just a bunch of stuff going on during this showing, and I was like, what? Where am I right now?
Well, how was it the first time for you? Did you have that experience like where the audience was oohing and awing and clapping and cheering? Because brother, that's what I had, and it was awesome.
Oh, well, I saw it Thursday, the week it came out, and
Yeah,
so I feel like I was among like some of the first groups of people to see it, and
cool.
so I of course avoided all the spoilers, and then I feel like all of the big surprises people reacted loud for, like of course like the biggest biggest reveals got the big pops they deserved, but even like some of the callbacks to the other movies and like some of the lines like that stuff didn't get nearly the same reactions the second time I saw it. And I don't know if that's just because it's a different fan base that saw it the first time, or if it's
Mm.
just maybe those are people that have already seen it more than once. I don't know.
Chris, how was it for you watching the film? Did you have a similar experience, or was it? I'm guessing it was a packed theater as much as it could be. I mean, how was it for you?
Surprisingly, the theater was not packed for me. I
Wow.
I mean, I live in the suburbs, so I went during the day, and that pretty much is like a guaranteed low attendance type of thing.
Right.
Really?
So, yeah, at least out here it is, yeah.
Yeah, see,
So
I
like
saw it at 4 in the afternoon on Thursday and it was full.
Wow.
I mean, opening day like that I could see it, but I saw it like I think I went either did I go Friday or Saturday? I can't even remember right now, but I went to like a 12:30 showing, so it was probably like the first showing of the day at that theater.
Wow. I went on that Friday, and I'm wanting to say we went to like a 10:30 in the morning showing because I wanted to get the first showing of the day. And man, it was sold out except for maybe 6 seats because I always use the app to buy the seats, And yeah, it was full at 10:30 in the morning. But man, the crowd I was in, I love it when people are behaving themselves and not doing stupid things on their stupid phones and talking through the whole film. But man, people were popping, they were cheering, they were clapping. You could audibly hear people gasping, and you could almost hear tears in the moments when it got emotional. I teared up more than one time. I mean, it was an experience. This is why I love going to the movies, is for a film like this. I got the same thing for Endgame, where people are invested. It's not like, we'll just go see the Spider-Man film because it's Spider-Man, who cares? But the crowd I was in was just the best. Um, before we really dive in here, did the film live up to everything you hoped it would be, Chris, for you personally?
Oh yeah, definitely. It may have even like I went in with pretty high expectations just because I wasn't able to avoid the spoilers.
Hmm.
Um, I think there was probably one or two things that I didn't know was going to happen that happened, but all the big cameos I pretty much had heard about, rumored beforehand. So for me, it was like I went in with pretty high expectations. Like, all right, this movie has a lot to live up to based on these rumors, and the fact that all of those things came true, plus a few other things, like it actually exceeded my expectations. So yeah, this is. Phil and I were talking about this in Spaces one day, like after we both had seen the movie, and I don't know if I can say that this is my number one Spider-Man movie because Spider-Man 2 is still up there for me, but
Hmm.
this one might tie it. Like it's that good.
And yes, kids, Spider-Man 2 is available in the archives for the 6M podcast. So go check it out. Phil, are you of the same opinion? Does it tie Spider-Man 2 for you, or has it beat it, maybe?
Um, it hasn't. I think Spider-Man 2 is just such a special movie in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I'm sure we'll get into later why I believe that Spider-Man 2 is still like the best, or at least one of the best. Um, but no, this was really good. This was really good. I just think it was just certain parts of it that on two viewings that you can tell that it was like, all right, well, we got to get all the spots in to give a nod to this. We got to get a nod to that, and that's not a bad thing. But I feel like a movie like Spider-Man 2 doesn't attempt to do that. It's its own experience. I feel
Right.
like this experience is very much built on A, how much of a Spider-Man fan are you, and B, how much of a movie Spider-Man fan are you?
Mm. Because unlike Spider-Man 2, this film was connecting 3 different universes at the same time, which is a tall order.
Yeah.
So, so we kick this thing off, and kids, most of the time we do a movie here on the 6M, we really dive deep. Phil can tell you, I take copious notes, and sometimes we review an hour and 45-minute film, and it takes 2 hours and 45 minutes. But hey, man, we talk. You know what I mean? We geek out over this stuff because who we are. So it may not be that in depth this time, but we'll at least give you the high points here. Basically, this is the fallout, of course, from Far From Home, and Quentin Beck may no longer be with us, which is debatable, I think. But his ghost did a lot of damage and is certainly haunting this film. Jake Gyllenhaal, of course, because he revealed to the world Peter Parker is indeed Spider-Man. Spoiler alert! In case you didn't know that, now you know.
Who's Peter
We
Parker?
finally get Miles Morales is Spider-Man. Everyone knows that. We finally get J. Jonah Jameson, and I, for one, am more than a little upset that the flat top is gone. What has happened to Jonah's hair? He looks like an old man now. I am not down for this new look of Jameson. So
Well, it's JK's real hair.
it is Jay. Yeah, but you know what? I heard him on a podcast recently where even he was like, wait a minute, I'm not going to have the flat top. Like, he was surprised they weren't going to give him his signature look.
It makes him, like, you know, he was basically an Alex Jones parable in this, so he looked a little more like Alex Jones.
We went a full year and a half without that idiot's name being mentioned on the show. So,
Oh man,
yeah.
Hey man, you got to push those vitamins.
when he started hawking the vitamins, I died laughing.
Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah, you know what? You make it fit the narrative because like it wouldn't make sense, I guess, now for him to be a hard boiled newspaper guy because that's not really the thrust now. Now he would be a digital presence, I suppose. So I guess that's what would make the most sense.
Yeah, it's an evolution of the character.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the thing about comic book characters is so many of them work at newspapers, and that's a dying industry, unfortunately. So we're gonna have to start seeing, like, pretty soon Lois Lane is going to be like a travel reporter for nationalgeographic.com or something. Like, you can only pretend that the Daily Planet can support itself in that skyscraper for so long.
Yeah.
Good call.
Apparently, there are either on TikTok or Instagram. You can watch Betty from the school do like these intern videos with the Daily Bugle. Have you guys watched those?
No, that's cool though.
No, that doesn't surprise me at all, though. In fact, her one spot in the movie made me laugh really hard when she was giving that little like news intro, and then she says some like really cheesy line, and then just looks super proud of herself for it.
When she was like, when she gave the MJ line, when she was like, "Go get him, Tiger," or should we say, Spider?
Yeah, and then she had this smile on her face, like, that was good. I'm so clever. Like, I don't know why that actress just pulled that part off really well for me. That was really funny.
I love that they care so much that they would take the time to interweave a backstory of video clips. I think that's the coolest thing, man.
They
That's
did
awesome.
that for what's her name too? Leslie Bibb's character from Iron Man 1 and 2, the reporter that Tony slept with.
Oh,
Like,
that's
there's a
cool.
bunch of extra content out there from a bunch of the DVD releases of her giving like news reports and reporting on different situations.
Yeah. I would say with the Betty Brant stuff, I think the thing that the Homecoming trilogy has done better than any other Spider-Man trilogy is really setting up what his life was like in high school. Like, I think by the third movie, like, we have like at least like some kind of relationship with all of his either friends or supporting background characters at his high school.
Mhm.
So we care about them at this point. Like, Flash is is in very small parts of this movie, but he's great. Like Betty in the few parts that he's in, like his teachers and stuff. I don't think we got that in any of the other Spider-Man movies.
I was kind of disappointed Flash didn't have a bigger role, to be honest.
Flash Thompson, man. Making his book titled Flashpoint.
Yes.
I don't know. That made me unreasonably happy. I don't know why, but when that scene popped up, I was just like, that's so perfect.
I just think it's just how he popped up. He popped up behind Ned with the book.
With the blonde hair.
Do you think maybe Feige at some point said, dude, we should totally call this book Flashpoint?
You gotta mess with him, bro.
Yes. That's great stuff, man. One of the first cameos, Chris, you mentioned earlier, we got to mention it. I mean, we get the Department of Damage Control. As an old school comic book guy, growing up in the 80s, I freaking love the Damage Control. I mean, we saw them before in the previous Spider-Man film, but we're seeing them here full force. I freaking love it. I'm here for it. I love that we're interconnecting so many things from the books. But one of the first cameos we get is what everyone suspected, and it was all but confirmed, I think, months ago. Matt Murdock advising Peter Parker. And dude, Charlie Cox is the best. And if you could give an award for a 3-minute appearance in a film, he should get it. A lot of stuff made me happy in this film. This had me, and going back to the crowd thing, people in that audience watch Netflix, baby, because we're talking about a round of applause so much that we miss Matt's opening line in the scene because people were like, yeah, they were like cheering, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so happy right now. Phil, Matt Murdock, dude. Coolest thing ever.
Man, I just think the foresight of having the Hawkeye reveal the same week.
Yes.
And doing the Matt reveal. And just how they did it, just showing his cane first and having him sit down. It was great. But I think like when people talk about this movie, like a lot of people talk about the third act, but I haven't heard enough people talk about just how good the first hour or so of this movie is. Like,
oh, so good.
I mean,
yeah.
I think when they start the movie by coming right back where it left off, and we get that great stuff of him swinging through the city to avoid people, and him on the phone with Ned doing the dude. and I think the best part of it is when they get back to the apartment, and it does like that ongoing scene where it looks like the camera is just literally just following him around the apartment.
Oh, it's great.
I thought that was great.
That was almost a nod to the Netflix shows because they had the one season of Punisher and the one season of Daredevil where they had the continuous shot, the hallway and then the prison. It kind of it gave those vibes to me for sure. Chris, Matt Murdock, dude. Did you? I don't think any of us managed to avoid that spoiler. I think we all kind of knew it was going to happen. But man, he had so much impact in that one brief moment of the film. So good, and him catching that break that came through the window should have made you go, "Oh, come on!" But because he's so good, and because it just makes sense. Like to me, that didn't take me out of the moment at all. I freaking loved it, man.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm a huge fan of the Daredevil show. I've actually been rewatching it recently. I'm up to like halfway through season 3 right now.
Oh yeah.
And I went back to revisit it because I was like, all right, well, if Kingpin's coming into Hawkeye, I want to go watch his stuff again. But yeah, just seeing him back in the MCU is so great because it opens the door for other characters potentially, like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and I would really enjoy seeing those characters, but just having Wilson Fisk and Daredevil alone, if that's all we get from the Netflix shows, I'll be fine, because they were the two best characters out of all those shows, in my opinion.
Yeah. So no Finn Jones as Iron Fist. What's going on? No love for Finn? Come on, man.
Not if they have the same action choreographer from Iron Fist. He does not want to work with Finn again.
Oh, so bad.
And
you know what? I defended him.
There's a new Iron Fist in the comic who's actually Asian, so
he is Asian.
Bringing that Iron Fist in. Or if you actually watched any of season 2 of Iron Fist, you'd know that Colleen eventually got her own Iron Fist powers. Just bring her in.
And you know, Phil, we may have talked about this on the Daredevil episode, uh, that Finn had no time. He was cast very late in the game
Yeah,
and had a matter of weeks. So I still maintain a lot of it's not on him. Like, I don't know. I stick to that.
I agree. I do think that some of it is not on him. Um, I mean,
But what about season 2?
you could also say that it's also just poor
Well,
casting as well. It
yes.
just I don't know. I feel like there's more than one issue with the um, Iron Fist show, and I feel like some people are just like, oh, it's just he's just so horrible, and it's like, yeah, but when he's in settings like where he can actually act and he's given better material, he's fine. Like I thought his
Yeah.
cameo in Luke Cage season 2 was great.
Man, same here.
And
Yeah.
I actually didn't mind him in the Defenders either.
Yeah, I think it's just the
No.
showrunners for his show massively dropped the ball.
Yeah. I agree with that. Um, But no, dude, getting Murdoch in the MCU, I'm so glad it's finally happened. It's okay that we didn't see him suit up. It's perfectly fine. I didn't need him to. That'll come eventually, but I'm perfectly fine with that. What about, and I got to hit you, both you guys, with this. For years, kids, if any of your comic book nerds, you'll know exactly the conversation I'm talking about. I had it. I'm sure probably both you guys have had it, maybe still have it, because I still have it too. This idea of if superheroes were real, they would have to hide their identities. They would not have a choice because the world is crazy, that people would come after them. Peter maintained it the whole time. Toby maintained it in the other Spider-Man trilogy. That was, I can't tell her, you can't know this, and I can't risk it here, and it's too dangerous. We finally see in a full length budget, big budget Spider-Man or superhero film here, whatever, that yeah, this is what happens when the world finds out. And it feels like he's in danger from the moment the world finds out, because we see him in Happy's apartment. It's locked down. It's their Stark tech on the door. I mean, it's he's got a hole up somewhere, and it feels like, yeah, this was the fear, is that now I'm in danger, my friends are in danger, everybody that knows me is in danger. I mean, had that secret not gotten out, I mean, of course, we don't have a part three, different story, but I think that this, if you're a nerd of this stuff and talk about like probably we all three do at some certain points here, this kind of reveals, yeah, this is what happens. I mean, Chris, do you think they handled it pretty well in terms of, yeah, this is what happens when the guy is revealed, and this is the danger he's in, and this now it feels like real world, not just a fun, happy superhero movie.
Yeah, I mean, secret identities are something that the MCU hasn't relied on very much. Like, Iron
Hmm.
Man literally revealed he was Iron Man at the end of his first
Right,
movie.
right,
Cap has always just been known as Steve Rogers. Thor never used the Donald Blake persona. They made more of a joke out of it in the first Thor movie than anything else.
yeah,
So it is kind of cool to see them finally like addressing some of that with Peter. Yeah, I did think they did a good job of like showing how people would react. Like that scene of him getting mobbed on the street a little bit seemed like, yeah, that's probably what would happen. Um I thought, I don't know, like the whole plot of the movie is one of those, like, I've heard so many people be like, why didn't Doctor Strange just cast a spell to do this? It would have solved all the problems and not caused any of the issues. Like that didn't really bother me, but I do wish that he would have tried a couple things before just going to Doctor Strange and being like, "Hey, can you Men in Black mind wipe the entire world?"
right. Yeah, because there's a meme going around that Peter goes to Strange and said, "Hey, can you just make everyone forget what Mysterio said?" And he
Yeah,
goes, "Done," and then credits, and the movie's over.
pretty much. Yeah, like there's a bunch of options he could have had. Like he could have said, "Oh, can you just make it so people forget Mysterio? He's dead, so who cares?" Like, yeah, there's a lot of options he could have had, and I do wish that he would have spent a few more minutes doing other things. But again, this movie had so much packed into it that like I understand they had to get to the crux of the movie quickly. So you can't fault it too much. Like if this was a 6 episode Netflix show, then yeah, it would have taken him an episode or two before he went to Doctor Strange and asked.
Right. Yeah, and you don't have that kind of time, like you said. You got to cram it in. Phil, did you get hung up on any of the plot, or did you just move along with it?
Um, I mean, there's certain things that I looked at and I kind of smiled at. Like, this is clearly like comic book stuff that they're doing.
Right.
I mean, going when you really think about it, they introduced him in Civil War, and to have him face the consequences of revealing his identity and stuff after Civil War, the same way they did in the comics, and then do like their version of One More Day and make it actually good. That's a flex.
Yeah.
Like, One More Day is a terrible comic book, by the way.
Oh, it's
It's a
horrible.
terrible comic
Yeah.
book, and Marvel managed to use aspects of it to make a good movie. Like, that's quite a feat. And as far as like his secret identity, I feel like handling his secret identity in the way that they do is unique to Spider-Man as a character. Like, he's one of the few characters that covers his entire face. Um, and not just that, they've made a point of, he's an everyman. Like, I feel like they did a better job of him being just a kid, in a regular neighborhood that anybody has access to. Like, they did a better job of that in this franchise than they have in any other one. So I think you can kind of feel right away, like, no, if everybody knows he's Peter Parker, then anybody can just seek him out. And it might not even just be a danger thing. It's just like, oh, he's just some kid from he's just some kid from Queens. And so it's like, if you could just look him up, and then, like, again, he's not well off. He's not like Iron Man, where if Iron Man's secret is out there, who cares? Like, he's already the most famous person in the world. Now he's famous for something else. And Steve is like, who cares if he doesn't have an identity, like secret identities? Like, he's kind of like a political figure. He's like a national icon. But Peter is not that. He's just a normal guy. So he's going to still have normal guy problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Steve's problems are different. Tony's problems are different. They still got issues, but they're different. Yeah, good call. What about the return? We've already mentioned him, Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. Once again, killing it with that perfectly edged facial hair.
That we find out he uses a guy to cut it.
Yes, I love that they threw that in there. That's so good. Dude, he just, I don't know how you guys feel, but every time he's on screen, I love him. There's just nothing about him that feels like, okay, cool, he's Doctor Strange, whatever. Not to me. I just feel like, oh my God, this guy is exactly Doctor Strange. There's no other way I can put it. He's so good. He's so entertaining. He's funny, but yeah, he's dramatic at the same time. He can crush you with one, line, or he can make you, hysterical with the next line. I just love him so much. And Chris, I think isn't it funny how we kind of bounce from Tony to Strange? It's like, once again, we're putting sort of the older veteran hero next to Peter. Not that that's the goal here, but you think maybe Peter kind of needs that, or they feel like maybe he kind of needs that. I don't want to say father figure, but maybe mentor to kind of lean on. Because by the end of this, it feels like that's gone. You know what I mean?
Well, I didn't even think they necessarily did that in this movie. Like, yeah, he went to Strange for help, but then he like tricked Strange and trapped him in the Mirrorverse for 70% of the movie. Like,
Right.
he was not learning from Strange in this movie like he was from Iron Man.
Very true.
If anything, he surprised Strange with the fact that he was able to use math to outdo his magic. Like, and that was another scene that I thought was really well done, that mirror dimension scene, because this franchise is probably the best Spider-Man franchise from beginning to end as far as like the 3 movies that it has, but it hasn't done as much as I think the Tobey movies did to establish that Peter's actually a genius. And this movie, I felt like, went a little bit more towards making that happen. Like, yes, he's going to get into MIT. He's using like complicated math to beat Strange, like on the fly.
Right.
Like, yeah. So in this movie, I felt like they did a better job characterizing him as much smarter than everybody else. And yeah, just all that stuff worked perfectly. Benedict, I felt like they finally got the character in Infinity War. I felt like his movie is visually very great, but I didn't care for his character so much in it sometimes. And now I think Doctor Strange is great because I feel like the writers finally have him down, and Benedict finally has a handle on how to play him. So now he's like, just seeing him in this movie, he was the perfect addition to it. And the stuff with him and Wong, like trading places as Sorcerer Supreme because of the blip, I love that so much.
That's so cool. God, dude, they lay so much groundwork. I'm telling you, a certain wrestling promotion could take cues from the Marvel Universe. They really could, in terms of, and plus I had this conversation with somebody the other day where I put forth the idea that, that company could take a cue from Marvel and how to treat their fans also, because fan service, fan service, fan service, but not in a way that talks down to you, not in a way that just takes your money, but in a way that makes you gratified, that makes you go, oh my God, that was the best thing I've ever seen. I mean, they just, again, I use the word interweaving and interlocking these things, but yeah, the fact that they keep dropping little things like the Wong stuff, they didn't have to mention that. But now that you're thinking, oh my God, Wong's the Sorcerer Supreme. What do we do now? Well, they'll address it in the next Doctor Strange movie. They're just letting you know, hey, this is coming soon, just so you know. I love that. Phil, this thing with Doctor Strange, the idea that Peter kind of goes to him, and we addressed this earlier. Peter goes to him, and Strange just go ahead and he just starts conjuring the spell just right away. But in his defense, you kind of figure he's going, well, this kid obviously thought about coming to me first. I mean, or whatever. So he knows what he wants. I'll just go ahead and start doing it for him. I trust him. But he didn't have to question Peter, did he? He thought Peter was ready to go, and then Peter started changing the game mid spell. Wouldn't that make the most sense?
Yeah, boy, this movie is very smart, and I think that people are not going to acknowledge this until later. But they essentially took what people complained about of the first two movies, and I never felt like it was a fair criticism of the first two movies that he relied on his relationship with Tony, because he learned his own lessons dependent of Tony as well. But I felt like they very purposely set up this relationship with him and Strange where it looked like Strange was going to be a mentor. And then not only did Peter outsmart him, like Chris said, but um, Steven never treats him like he is like a mentee, because every time he tries to do like the Mr. Stark thing with him and call him, sir, he's like, don't call me sir. And or every time he would come in with an idea, it wouldn't be like he would try to correct him and teach him a lesson. He'd go, oh well, well, let's do it. You're grown enough to make this decision, let's make the decision.
Right.
And like he never told him like we can't do that, or the only time that he that he came back, and I thought it was one of the best scenes in the movie, is when he goes, man, you mean I could have just called them? And he goes, wait, you had me erase everybody's memory instead of just calling the school, and then he just cuts him standing out the side the door.
Yeah, because he assumed he did his homework first. He assumed he took all the right steps before going to the wizard that lives in the middle of the city to ask for help.
Right. And I mean, he even mentions it later in the movie. Like he goes like, I forget although everything we've been through together, like you're still a kid. And I think at some point, like, Strange looks at him as kind of like contemporary. He's another Avenger or an Avengers adjacent character. So he doesn't look at him like, oh, this kid needs my help and he needs me to help mentor him. Because in his mind, we both saved the world together. So I don't really need to nurture.
He even said that.
Yeah.
So, he even said that. He's like, we saved half the universe together. You can call me, you don't have to call me sir. He's like, okay, Steven. He's like, that feels weird, but I'll allow it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like that also is just such a great theme for how far we've come with Peter as a character, because I mean, when you look at just how he's nurtured and how they've shown how smart he is from day one, like, I mean, we went all the way from him in Civil War, being excited that he found a DVD player and he was building his own suit and it was very crude, to all the way in Far From Home. He was doing what Tony did for him and building his version of the Stark suit. And then we get here and he's using his math to outsmart Strange, and later doing other cool stuff with science. It's like, no, like Peter is like over 5 movies, he's like become like a pretty mature and smart man. And so I just think it's just like almost like strangers looking at him like we've looked at him. Like he's matured so much to this point. Like he doesn't really need me to hold his hand, but at the same time, he's making a bad decision. You're not helping him.
Yeah, no kidding. I love that notion because it is 5 movies, isn't it? That's crazy.
Yeah,
Is it 5?
technically 6
Yeah,
if
it
you
is.
count
Yep.
Civil War, because it's Civil War, both Avengers movies he was
Nice.
in, and then his 3 own movies.
Yep. Wow, that is right. Holy crap, time flies. Yeah, that I mean, do you consider this Peter Parker to be fully fleshed out, or are we still in the process of making that happen?
I think that he is. I think that he's fully fleshed out in the sense that we've watched him go through all of the adolescent phase Spider-Man stuff. Like,
Yeah.
we've watched him make all of the same like high school mistakes, and we've watched him get all the way to the end of his high school years and understanding certain things that he just cannot do anymore. And I think that's the thing that's just so brilliant about this movie is it represents really the end of his life as a teenager. It's like he learns a lot of tough lessons throughout this trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. We got to talk a little bit about the cast before we really kind of back up here for a second. We haven't mentioned Zendaya as MJ, and they have retrofitted her name. She's now Michelle Jones Watson. Some people are getting really hung up on that. I don't know if I am because I can't decide if I care about it or not. It does kind of feel like a cheap move. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I still think she's great. I think that this version of MJ makes a lot of sense. And I love that they are taking the thrust of the classic Spider-Man / Peter Parker / Flash Thompson and all this other stuff, but they're making it fit today. Not making it fit, but they're having it fit today and updating and all that stuff. I'm not one of those fans that got hung up on all that and said, "Wait a minute, she doesn't even look like Mary Jane." I don't care. I mean, it's
Yeah,
whatever. It was a little off-putting in the beginning, but as I like, let's just watch the movie. And I love her. I think she's great.
I never understood that criticism because he's a kid from Queens. He wouldn't have been going to high school and then there's all of a sudden like this just like redheaded outright model going to school with him. Like I love the idea that he's in Queens and he goes to school with a diverse crowd, like, and all of his friends are diverse. That makes perfect sense for where he lives.
Yeah. Yeah, she I mean, they're a real life couple off screen, right? I mean, these two are actually together. Is that just a thing?
It's the Spider-Man tradition. Every leading man in Spider-Man dates his leading woman.
Think it's in the contract or what?
As a matter of fact, there is a story, like I think Amy Pascal warned him, like, don't do it. I saw the other two do it. Don't do it.
Wow. Crazy. Yeah, that's good stuff. I see Jacob, and I don't want to butcher his name, Jacob Batalon as Ned Leeds. I love this kid. I call him kid, but I feel like this guy's 40. How old is he?
I don't know.
Because man, he's actually bald. He has no hair. But I don't know. I got to see his age now. He's 25.
Yeah, I was
So
about to say he's definitely not
Tom
40.
Holland. Yeah, Tom Holland's 25 now, right?
Well, there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, that works.
The man in the chair. I love Ned.
Yeah, Ned
love
was
that
good
line.
in this movie too. Like, I swear to God, one of the parts of the movie that did not get a reaction in my theater that I popped for was when Ned goes like, "Peter, I know that I have superpowers, but I promise not to turn into a villain and like fight you." And then Andrew Garfield just like pats him on the shoulder, like, "Good job, buddy." That I don't know why that made me laugh so hard. Andrew Garfield subtly was one of the best parts of this movie.
Yeah, I
Oh
think
my
it's just the
God.
way that he reacts to it. He's like, yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Because he's telling him that his best friend turned on him and like his best friend died in his arms. Like what?
Yeah, Ned has several scenes where he adds something hilarious to all of it. Like when they're laying on that rooftop and he's like, finally some privacy. He just walks in like, Ned, what are you doing? Or
Third wheeling.
Yeah. Or when he's like, man, do you think there's any crime in Boston? Yeah, wicked crime.
How about when he's talking to damage control and telling them everything?
Yes.
Admitting to everything,
And the stuff with his grandma in the house too, and he's just like, my grandma was wondering if you could get that cobweb, like since you're up there.
Yeah. It's great. She wasn't affected by any of it. There's a portal in your living room. She's not even affected.
No, she like freaked out at that, but then was fine 10 seconds later.
Right. Oh, it's good stuff. We got to mention Favreau, Favs, right, as Happy Hogan. And man, I love that we still have some tissue, some connecting tissue back to Tony Stark. This guy has endured loss. I mean, I don't know about not to the extent of Peter Parker here, but man, he's suffered some loss. He's going to suffer another one in this film. He's just automatic. This never feels like a character. This feels like they yell action and Favreau just recites his lines and he's done for the day because he is Happy Hogan. If there's a blueprint on how to do this character, he's already got it. I mean, I love that he's in this film, and he and May end up splitting up, and he don't want to talk about it, but he still has a thing for, and you can tell. That was a good little bit of comic
May,
relief.
who wouldn't?
Of course, hottest Aunt May we've ever seen. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. That IG thing she did like days before the movie came out, I was just like, okay, all right.
Oh, are you talking about where she said nobody gives a fuck that I'm Aunt May?
No, I'm talking about the one when she was sitting on that couch and she was lifting her leg and like staring into the camera like, yes, I know I'm hot.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, okay, all right.
Well, she knows. If she knows, let her know it.
Yeah. Happy's great and everything. I mean, I watched Iron Man 3 a few days ago, and just how funny he is in Iron Man 3, man. He's great. He's just so great a character.
I'm not a tech guy like you. I don't know how to flip the screen. Just flip the screen, Happy.
He's sitting in that chair like, hey, I'm watching you, pal. I'm watching you, pal.
The shifty guy right here, I'm following him.
Yeah.
I love when you find out that Favreau's been awake that whole time and listening to Peter and MJ's conversation.
Oh, that's great.
And then he's just like, oh, MJ says hi. He just, hello. just the deadpan delivery. Yeah,
right.
Happy. I hope Favreau keeps coming. Like, I want him to be involved in the Riri Williams stuff. Like, he is such a great character actor, and just having him around as a little bit of comic relief and to connect us back to the very origins of the MCU, it's super valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other scene where he's funny in is when they show the mugshot of him that's the same hair as Iron Man 3 with the mullet, and he gives that look like, hey, at least they got a good picture of me, right?
Yeah. Oh my god. At least they used the good picture.
Yeah.
Wonder what
He's
the
great.
bad picture is.
Yeah, no kidding. I love that. And, that's another guy we've seen his evolution from the first Iron Man film to this point. And, yeah, I love that guy. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some villains. We got some classic Spider-Man villains back together. Well, together for the first time, all in one film, which is insane to me that they pulled this off, but they sure pulled it off. We, of course, got the great Willem Dafoe, who should always play a villain all the time because he's so great, and he should be Green Goblin as much as possible because he's amazing. Jamie Foxx is Max Dillon / Electro. Alfred Molina, again, the great Alfred Molina as Otto Octavius, which made everyone giggle, which was hilarious. Rhys Ifans, and hopefully I pronounced his name right, as the Lizard, and then Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman. Mind-blowing, insane, great stuff. Some people are hung up. Let's face it, kids, everyone's hung up on something. But some people are hung up on the Jamie Foxx stuff, which is kind of not really the character he had before. Jamie Foxx is great. I don't know why we have such heartburn over weird stuff. Like, every time he had a scene, he chewed it. I mean, I thought it was great. I mean, was he too over the top for anybody? Because he wasn't for me.
No, I thought he was kind of understated, honestly. Like he
Hmm.
was the least out there of the villains.
I thought that he was great.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys that I felt like when he was cast in Amazing Spider-Man 2, I was like, they've got a really good actor in him, and they've got him doing this kooky Schumacher-esque villain in this movie,
Oh,
and it was bad, and I felt bad for him because he was so excited for the role, and he talked about how he wanted to do something because his kids are a fan of these movies, and he really wanted to do something cool, and it was kind of like a mirrored version of Andrew in some ways, of like both of them went into this wanting to make something cool, and it's seen as one of the worst Spider-Man movies. So I was glad that he got a chance to redeem himself in this and be an actual good movie. And man, you talk about the glow up. They talked about it briefly in the movie where Lizard's like, "Man, what happened to you? Like, you look different now. Like, this
yeah,
guy
yeah.
came in with like the best haircut, like just like perfectly lined mustache and beard. Like, he looked great." I was like, he came out of Portal looking fantastic.
Yeah. I love that they give such subtle nods to stuff like that. When Don Cheadle became Rhodey, and they're in the courtroom scene, he's like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Don't even start with me." Is that little nod to the audience like, okay, this is not the same actor. We know it's not. Let's move on.
Yeah, I really like Jamie in this movie though, man. Like he just I like that they put the nods to the like actual 616 Electro with just like his look and everything. I like that he had like a power upgrade. I thought that other than the Goblin, he was the most dangerous out of, I guess we'll call him the fearsome five because it's not six of them.
Ooh.
He was like the most dangerous out of them. He was the guy that was like like he was the toughest to deal with for most of the movie. And he had some
In
great
fact,
one-liners.
Spider-Man didn't even take him out. It was Otto.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
he had some great one-liners too, like his them explaining what happened to him and how he became Electro to Sandman. And he's like, "Yeah, I fell in a super collider." He's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you gotta be careful where you fall,
Yeah.
huh?"
He had some really great lines in this. Like when Peter accidentally transported a tree back to the sanctum, and then Ned's like, "Can you ask Peter if that's like a villain that turns into a tree?" Jimmy's like, "It's just a tree, man. Just a tree." Like
It's great.
his delivery on so many little lines was so great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or
such good
can
stuff.
I ask you a question? Those your Legos?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Or no, the best part was what he's like, "So we really gonna stand here like I'm not butt naked?" And Sandman's just like, "Well, I am."
That's great, man. Of all these villains, for me, Doc Ock is the one that, of all of them that's in this little clique, he's the one that shouldn't be here. Not like shouldn't be here, but I'm talking about in terms of character, because he was the guy. He didn't start off as a villain. He did not start off as anything. If not for that chip malfunctioning at the base of his brain, I guess he's not heal. Like there,
Yeah.
he didn't get hungry with power. He didn't have a plan of world domination. He tried this experiment, which he thought was going to benefit mankind. The chip gets blasted, and now these things bring out the worst in him. I mean, you can make the case for Defoe, but Defoe is disturbed. I
Yeah.
mean, you know,
Yeah, the thing that I enjoy about this movie the most is I feel like they didn't just take all of these characters from these movies and just plop them in here. Um, there was care taken to what was their stories in each of their movies, and it wasn't like they just put Otto in this movie and was like, all right, well, we know he was the bad guy of that movie, so let's just have him do evil stuff. Like they basically let us know from the beginning that he got redeemed by the end of his movie. So that's part of his arc in this movie. Like all of the Willem Dafoe stuff, like it's very clearly like his arc in that movie. Like no, I was gonna say the only one I feel like they didn't pay that much attention was Sandman, but no, I feel like his is pretty much the same. Like he doesn't want anything to do with all this craziness. Like he just wants to go home.
yeah,
that
And
yeah.
Lizard was probably the most underdeveloped of the two,
but
or
that's
of the five.
But he was underdeveloped in his own movie.
Yeah,
Very
but
true.
tell me it wasn't funny when they're all in their little holding cells and Lizard goes to Jamie Foxx. He's like, "I could give you a makeover," and Jamie Foxx is just like, "Let me guess, into a lizard." And he's just like, "Yes."
Yes.
Yeah, I think even Jamie's explanation of of his scheme is like, yeah, he wanted to turn the whole city into lizards. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of, and Phil, you mentioned it wasn't the Sinister Six. I was more than a little surprised we did not, and I don't know if I expected him, full scene in the wings all through the film. We didn't even get a glimpse of the Vulture.
Yeah. I thought that the final member of the Sinister Six all this time was going to be Beck. I thought Beck was going to show up by the end of the movie.
Ooh.
Especially the scene where Peter was in the apartment and his spider sense was going off and he couldn't figure out what it was. I was like, it's got to be Beck, right? And it didn't turn out to be him.
Man, I don't know if I even suppose that. Wonder, did we know why that Vulture was not in this, or was it? I mean, I don't know if we've gotten that deep yet online in
mean,
terms of what they're telling us.
It could have been just like we just didn't have the budget to pay one more big name actor, or we just didn't have the
Right.
room to bring in one more big name actor.
Yeah.
Or maybe it has something to do with however he's in Morbius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, this is a stacked cast as is. It would have been pretty
Very
hard
true.
to slide Michael Keaton in there.
I'm trying to reserve judgment on the Morbius thing, but I got thoughts.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
Doesn't look
We'll see.
very good.
Yeah. We'll see, kids. Let's talk about some heroes because that's fun stuff too. We got 2 more Spider-Men. Holy God. I love that both of them denied it. I love that Garfield was online saying, guys, I don't know what you've heard. We're not in this movie. It's great. I love that so much. I'm also, and Chris, Phil tell you this, I'm the old school Spider-Man guy because my Spider-Man growing up was the dude from the TV show with the big hair and the bell bottoms. And they asked, he's still alive, by the way. They asked Nicholas Hammond last year if he had a part, and he's like, "Nah, they never approached me." I'm like, "You couldn't have put him in a 30-second spot, like something just as a nod to the audience that may know who this guy is." Like, we're not dead, for God's sake, but it's okay. I'm getting over it. I'm dealing with it. But man, 2 more Spider-Men. Andrew Garfield, Chris, maybe perhaps stole the show, and I love Toby. But there's this outcry now for a third Amazing Spider-Man film. Do you think this actually happens?
Well, the rumor is that Sony is considering developing projects in his universe again. I think I even read an article this morning that said that like they want Emma Stone back for a Gwen Stacy project of some kind. Obviously, that would probably be Spider-Gwen, but I would love it if they somehow managed to combine the Venom universe with his and just make him Andrew Garfield's Venom. Just make Tom Hardy. Yeah, so that would be cool. But yeah, I thought Andrew Garfield was a good Spider-Man in bad Spider-Man movies. So seeing him get a chance to portray the character not only again but in a different way, like he's a little scarred and he's a little more down than we're used to seeing Peter Parker, and to watch him be able to like grow back to having that kind of not youthful, what's the word I'm looking for, like by the end of the movie he sort of has that glow back about him, where he's like oh, I like being Spider-Man again. And yeah, there was some great scenes between all 3 of the Spider-Men in this movie that I feel really is the biggest strength of the movie, is how well those 3 played off each other and how different each of them felt as the character.
And I love that line he has where he said, "I always wanted brothers." Dude, that tugs your heartstrings, because if you really think about it, Cap had the Avengers, Tony had the Avengers, Spider-Man has nobody. I mean, yeah, he occasionally in the books he runs into people and he has this affiliation, that affiliation, but like, and I in my head I go back to what Paul McCartney said about Elvis once, when he's like, Elvis had his posse, he had his guys, but no one knew what Elvis was going through except Elvis. They didn't know what it was like on stage. They didn't know what it was like, the screaming girls and people throwing themselves at him and the drugs and all that stuff. No one knew but him, because he couldn't really tell anybody because no one understood. He's like, at least we had the four of us that we all could relate to each other and we could share these experiences with. He had nobody. So it's like, to that regard, Spider-Man has nobody, and he doesn't want to burden his aunt with it. He doesn't want to burden MJ with it. And he can only tell Ned so much for fear of him being in danger. So like the fact that these three guys kind of had a family thing going on was awesome. Phil, what about Andrew Garfield? Absolutely killing it. Did you expect him? Not that the guy can't act. I didn't expect this at all for him to just kill it in this movie.
I expected him to do well in the sense that out of the three of them, I feel like he is possibly the biggest Spider-Man fan.
Mm.
And I feel like he went into his movies trying to be the best Spider-Man possible. He just was in a bad situation. Um, and I feel like this movie went a long way to try to redeem him. Like there are a lot of meta scenes where they basically poke fun at the fact that his franchise failed and that, I understand what they're trying to do. Like there's the real world implications of his franchise failing and that his last movie he essentially failed because his girlfriend died and everything. But I feel like this movie basically tried to basically tell him in character and then tell us as an audience like, no, you're not a failure, you were great, you were amazing. um
Yeah, they
and,
kept saying you're amazing.
and I there's just so many things they did with him, and I feel like he's better in this movie than he is in both of the Amazing Spider-Man movies because he's so much more believable as a 20-something Spider-Man than he was as like a high school Peter Parker. Um, he's just more believable, and there's certain things that he does with the character here as Peter Parker that he feels more like Peter Parker. Like when he first comes through the portal and he takes off his mask and he's like saying all these things like, oh man, so you're telling me the multiverse, all these things are actually real? And that was the first time we've actually heard him talk like a nerd.
Yeah, no kidding.
And
Yeah.
it was just certain things that they did with him in this movie that, I mean, this was really a avenue for him to shine. Like I feel like the third act was them trying to really redeem Andrew Spider-Man. And I know I've seen people say that Toby wasn't as great, but Toby didn't really need redeeming. Toby
Right.
Toby had his moment in the sun. Andrew kind of didn't. And I mean, I feel like this is Tom's franchise for better or worse. So, Tom was always going to be seen as the star of this movie. And to be honest, by the end of this movie, I feel like Tom is cemented as the best movie Spider-Man,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. But I feel like this was definitely a way to give us more of Andrew and to redeem him. Now, do I think that means we're going to get more Andrew movies? I don't know if I believe that. I think people are kind of putting too many eggs in the basket, but we'll see.
I mean, if anybody can pull it off, Marvel could pull it off. But do you think it makes more sense, as Chris suggested, keep him in his own corner and don't really cross him over with MCU? Just let him have Venom and play in that universe.
I think that you get into a dangerous territory when you start trying to spin too many plates because
Mm,
Sony
yeah.
is essentially trying to make all of these solo movies with Spider-Man villains that look like they're kind of going to be a disaster. And now you're talking about starting to make more than one Spider-Man trilogy, and then you're also doing the Into the Spider-Verse movie, and then you've also got fans that want you to introduce Miles at some point in the live action movies. At some point you have to make a definitive decision. What is the focus going forward, and do one thing well and not try to do everything.
Yeah, yeah. Chris, do you agree with that? You think that's too much at one time, maybe?
I mean, it depends on how they do it. Like, if they let Marvel have the Tom Holland version and they just focus on the Andrew version at Sony, then I think it could work. But it
I
is
don't.
it is what it is. Like, I don't know if we're gonna get an Andrew movie right away. Maybe it'll happen in a few years. Like once Tom is done, they'll go back to Andrew or something. I don't know,
I
but
The reason that I'm not sure about that is because I feel like at the end of this movie, I came away from it looking like this is the most Sony Spider-Man of the three MCU Spider-Man movies. Like they made a point to show us all of the great things that Sony did with Spider-Man throughout this entire movie. At the end of the movie, they gave us this huge thanks in the credits to Avi Arad. Like this was Sony flexing
Oh,
throughout this entire movie. I don't feel like
yeah.
this was like, all right, well, we're gonna come away from this and just give you full control of that Spider-Man that you have, and we're gonna do our own thing over here. I didn't get that. I didn't get that implication from this.
No, but I
yeah.
also never expected to see Andrew Garfield back as Spider-Man at all. So like at this point, I'm kind of when it comes to the MCU, I always just have it's kind of like with WWE, like, anything is possible, or
Yeah, but
nothing's over till it's over.
we're not talking about MCU at that point. If they're making another Andrew movie,
true.
that's not MCU. That's Sony.
Well, right. But what I'm saying is, like, when it comes to any of this stuff, really, like, if they think they can make money off it, they're gonna do it. Like,
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying the only thing that I'm
Yeah.
saying that I'm not sure with is I feel like you get into a tough spot when you try to do too many things at once. And I feel like you got to focus on
I agree.
on what it
I'm-
is that you do well and do that well. Because I feel like that's how they got into this problem in the first place with the Spider-Man movies at Sony, because they decided, no, we're not just going to make Spider-Man movies. We're going to try and make the Sinister Six spinoff. We're going to try and do all these movies. And that's part of why Amazing Spider-Man 2 failed. And I think that it's kind of the missed lesson, because we're all celebrating how great Spider-Man movies are with this movie, is that we got 3 not good Spider-Man movies in a row because of Sony. That was their fault.
Yeah.
And let's don't forget that Sam Raimi never wanted to do Venom.
Yeah,
He
that was
objected.
Sony's fault. If they didn't
Yes.
meddle and let him make the movie he wanted to make, Spider-Man 3 wouldn't have been a disaster.
Right.
And I mean, you can say what you want about the Amazing franchise. I wasn't the biggest fan of both of those movies, but I thought the first movie was serviceable. The second movie was bad because it did exactly what I think Iron Man 2 did poorly, and that it tried to be an outlet to create all of these spin-offs and tell you, look, we've got all these other movies coming up. And it's like, no, just make a good movie. Like, don't just try to make all of these commercials for other movies you want to make.
Well, that's exactly what happened with the Tom Cruise Mummy movie too. Like, they're like, we're gonna launch a universe and we're gonna tease all these different characters, like, the Man from the Black Lagoon and Jekyll and Hyde and all this stuff, and it just ended up being terrible.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at it from afar, like, I don't want to turn this into a Sony bash fest, because, as we said, like, there's a lot of great things in this movie that happen because of Sony. And I mean, you can make a very valid case that Spider-Man and comic book movies are where they are right now because of Sony. But at the same time, looking at that trailer for Morbius, what I've seen of the Venom movies, I'm not that hopeful about what Sony will do when left to their own devices.
Dude, I have a closet, and I think my last count was 9 long boxes full of books that I've collected since I was 9-10 years old, and I still have them. And years later, and I still pick up books. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information, and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. And I watched the Venom movie, and I'm sitting there kind of beating myself up thinking, am I out of touch? Am I that old dude that's like, this sucks? Am I that guy now that I'm going to hate on this? Or is it really that bad? I mean, are you guys entertained by the Tom Hardy stuff? Because I personally think it's so bad.
Like that voiceover that the whole time it's dominating.
Stop! Like, dude, I Phil, you're laughing. Dude, I laugh when I'm like, is this supposed to be serious? Because I hate this.
That was a pretty spot on Venom.
Thank you.
That was great. I don't enjoy them. I have not seen the second one yet. I came away from the first one feeling like it was very dumb, and not dumb in a this is a funny, intentionally dumb comic book thing. I just didn't enjoy it. It just felt dumb.
Yeah. Chris, what's your take on Venom?
I didn't mind the first one. I actually thought the second one was kind of fun because I went into it with such low expectations.
There you go.
But, like, I'm sorry, you can't cast Woody Harrelson as a psychopath and not expect me to not like it. Like,
he's gonna ham it up.
Woody Harrelson, exactly. Woody Harrelson knew exactly what kind of movie that was, and it was just like, I'm gonna play it as cheesy as possible. And like, he literally was channeling some of his Natural Born Killers performance in that movie. And Naomi Harris as Shriek was fantastic. I thought those two were actually the highlight of the movie for me. Like, I at that point I was almost like, give me a Carnage movie for Venom. Like, just give me Woody Harrelson and Naomi Harris like running around literally like the couple from Natural Born Killers. Like, they were giving me those vibes of him and Juliette Lewis throughout that whole movie. Because they're just two psychopaths who are out for like revenge.
Did you think the Venom stuff in this film and No Way Home was shoehorned in and wasn't necessary? Because I felt like it was.
I actually think, after thinking about it for a few days, I think what they did was smart. Because had they tried to put Venom into the movie as another villain, make him the sixth of the Sinister Six or whatever, I felt that would have overpacked the movie. I thought using him just for a funny post-credit sequence was exactly as much as we needed out of him. And the fact that he left a little bit of symbiote behind means we might get an MCU version of Venom that's different. So I'm open to that idea. But yeah, I didn't need more of him in this movie. I thought the scene of him in the bar in Mexico, just like oddly questioning, like, so this whole world just has a bunch of super people in it? Like, there's a guy in a tin suit and there's a dude called the Hulk? Like, yeah. I don't know. I just thought that was a perfect way to use him and not make it feel overbearing.
Honestly, this felt like Marvel going, "Hey, I heard you got a Venom. Like, listen, put him in the credits. Let's scoop a little bit of a symbiote off this guy and send him on his way. See you later."
Now, I know Carnage is an offspring of Venom. He has other offspring in the comics that they could potentially make this not Venom, right? Like, this could end up being a different symbiote character.
Oh yeah, there's tons of symbiote characters in the comics. It could.
I know they just got done with a huge symbiote storyline where they had like symbiote dragons flying around.
Yeah, it could be what they're doing, but I really feel like this is a way for them to kind of get the best of both worlds of having Venom exist in his own universe as like a anti-hero, and then get like the symbiote if they want to do the black suit at some point.
Yeah.
And for anyone taking notes at home, the bartender is Cristo Fernandez, who plays Danny Rojas in Ted Lasso. So there you go. And if you haven't watched Ted Lasso, shame on you. It's amazing.
I refuse to give Apple any money.
Oh, but it's so good. I vouch for it 6 ways from Sunday. I just didn't, I don't know. And here's what I don't want to say make me mad, but it kind of kills me. Tom Hardy is a very good actor.
Yeah.
And when I see him do this stuff, I'm like, dude, I don't often say this about comic book films, but you are so much better than this. Like,
well,
and I guess I'm the only guy that feels that way. I don't know.
He's clearly having fun. I will say that. I do think that he's having fun in this role.
Oh yeah.
He better be He better be getting paid too, because good God.
I mean, yeah, I think he's getting paid good money. I think he's having fun. I mean, so more power to him in that way. I just don't enjoy the Venom movies.
Yeah, me neither.
And they're not designed to feel like normal comic book movies, so I get why a lot of people aren't keen on them. But like, the second one is less than 100 minutes. Like, it's one of the tightest comic book movies in terms of it does not pack a bunch of excess crap into it. It's just a really streamlined story that's simple to follow with some fun action sequences. Like, I actually would recommend both of you see the second one, because I think you'd enjoy it more than the first.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I've seen some of it, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this. The effects are good. I don't know.
I will say that it definitely felt like the biggest problem with comic book movies is, let's have the villain for the first movie be a composite of the hero. So it's like, Iron Man had Ironmonger, Thor had Loki, Cap had Red Skull, like all very similar power sets between these characters, and Venom is fighting two symbiotes in a row in 2 movies. So I get why that was a turnoff for some people. They're like, I want to see Venom fight something that's not a symbiote. And I agree. And I think if they do get a third Venom movie going, that it should steer clear of the symbiotes.
And plus, on its face, the Venom character, the fact that it's working independently of any Spider-Man, in my opinion, sets it off on the wrong foot. I think the reason why Eddie Brock as Venom in the books worked was because of his hatred for Spider-Man. I know they screwed it up in the Sam Raimi film. I get it, but they didn't have to screw it up. They could have went back again, and as we've seen, they got Daredevil right the second time. Freaking thank God! So they can get things right.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's second life for comic book characters. We've seen a better
Yeah.
version of Bane. We've seen a better version of several characters. You can do a better version of Venom. But I also agree that I just don't think that you can do Venom independent of Spider-Man. Even if you go the Agent Venom route and use Flash Thompson, it just doesn't work without Flash having this admiration for Spider-Man. It's a big part of why he is who he is. And there are several other Venom characters that is the same way. You just cannot do it without Spider-Man.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Plus, the MCU doesn't exactly have the Flash Thompson that's made to be Agent Venom.
Yeah, but I mean, if Sony wanted
Tony
to...
Revolori is the least superhero-ish actor on the planet.
I agree. I'm just saying, like, if they decided to do Agent Venom instead of the route they went, wouldn't have even worked without Spider-Man, because you still need to have some connecting tissue to where Flash Thompson came from.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, it just feels like he's, like we said, he's the Spider-Man character, but we're making this work because Sony's, oh, hey, we own that. We'll do that. Dude, such a big part of me says, God, if Sony just weren't in the picture, they just weren't attached to any of this stuff, this would have been, it's a different movie. It's a different everything. It's not, I mean, and I really, really enjoyed this film. But like, I don't know. I don't know when the deal is up with Sony. It feels like it'll never be up with Sony. It feels like Sony's got their claws into this universe forever.
Watching this movie, it definitely felt like being a kid of a divorce. I don't know if everybody will understand this, but some of the Sony stuff that you see, like, that's when, I spent the weekend with my dad, and it's like, oh, this is okay, but my mom wouldn't have done that. My mom wouldn't let me do that. And when you go home, everything just seems so much better because your mom does everything. She kind of babies you. And I feel like in a lot of ways, this movie was like those awkward visits where, you'd have dinner with both your parents and they were trying to get along the best as possible. And it was like small compromises here, small compromises there. And that's what the Venom thing felt like. It felt like, here's a compromise. Like, here, we'll let you use your crummy Venom in our movie, but leave the symbiote, please.
You can't just own everything. You got to leave some of the symbiote behind. We haven't talked about what happens to Aunt May. And for years, we've talked about and thought about and discussed, I'm sure, and debated with other people and heard the debate and seen the debate rage. Why have we never seen Uncle Ben? And the explanation, Phil, I think you and I came up with this on the Spider-Man 2 episode of the 6M, was that you don't really need to see Uncle Ben die again. We kind of get it. And plus, Aunt May is his rock. We just kind of assume Uncle Ben has died. We don't know the backstory because we kind of already know the backstory. But then in this film, we lose Marissa Tomei. And man, you talk about a bait and switch. When she got up and it was like, oh no, I'm okay. And I thought, oh man, they just teased us killing Aunt May. That's horrible. And then she collapses. Dude, they had me. I didn't know it was even coming. Did anyone else fall for that but me?
They definitely got me with the scene. This is one of the few scenes where it just legitimately got me. And there's so many things they did with the scene that I think were interesting. I think for people that are fans of Miles's comic and they'll say that, the MCU has kind of cherry picked things from his comic and used it here. This is very similar to the way that his mom died in the Venom arc, I think. But at the same time, they very cleverly did this thing where after Civil War, the thing that started One More Day is that Aunt May got shot. And so he made this deal to get her back. And so I feel like they did this thing here where it took the good bits of One More Day, like Aunt May getting killed because of a mistake he made, and him understanding afterwards that he can't fix it. He can't fix everything.
And Chris, you know they say that every time Tom Holland cries in a Spider-Man film, that an angel loses his wings. Once again, we get a crying Tom Holland, and dude, he's so good, and it just feels so real. And like we grew to love Aunt May during the course of these movies, which is why this impact had so much of an impact. Was this death? I teared up during this. I'm like, I cannot believe they're doing this. But then at the same time, my head, I thought, no, this kind of makes sense. Like I didn't want it to happen, but I kind of got it. Does Spider-Man need a character close to him to die? We thought he had it with Tony Stark's death. That wasn't enough. Now he loses Aunt May. I mean, what'd you think about this?
I mean, the scene was well done, and I loved how they sort of changed the famous quote about responsibility just a little bit, and she delivered that really well. I don't think I'm not gonna say like it's 100% necessary that she had to die, but I also don't think it was a mistake. Like it was a very well done scene. It gave Peter that push he needed, and now, I mean, with the movie ending the way it ended, she would have forgotten about him anyway. So like
Oh, yeah.
writing her out this way allows them to give Peter that motivating death. And then, man, like the fact that he wanted to kill Green Goblin and was like going to because of what he did to Aunt May, like it made the final battle and the conclusion to that so much heavier.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they did a really good job with it. I've been a huge Marissa Tomei fan for years. My Cousin Vinny is one of those movies I can throw on and watch literally anytime.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they gave her a little more to do in this movie, because I felt like, she was just sort of there for the last two. In fact, even the second movie, she barely had any part because she wasn't in Europe with him. But I felt really bad for Happy, because it's like, not only does she break up with him, but then she dies. And then it's like you see him at the grave with Peter at the end, and it's like not only is he sad about that, but he doesn't remember Peter, so they can't even grieve with each other. Like, man, what a rough ride that guy has had in the MCU recently.
And for a split second, when Happy walked up, I forgot that hey, he wouldn't know him. And then suddenly he says, "Did you know her? How did you know her?" And I thought, "Oh my God, he doesn't know him." I forgot. Like in that moment, I had forgotten because the gravity of the moment was big, and I just kind of forgot that Happy wouldn't know him, and it crushed me. I'm like, oh, like you said, he can't even grieve with him.
Yeah, I'm a little curious if they're going to somehow make it so somebody in the Avengers still knows who he is. Like, oh, Scott was in the quantum realm when the spell was cast, so he still remembers. Or what if Thor and Captain Marvel's powers are so powerful that the memory spell doesn't work on them, or something like that? I could see them finding a way to do that in the next Avengers movie, where like only one person recognizes him and has to vouch for him.
Well, if Thor was off world when the spell happened, they wouldn't work on him, right?
Well, they said that the spell spans multiple universes.
Oh, I
and
see. Gotcha.
So like I think it probably affected everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that they'll find some way of saying like, oh, this character's magic is so powerful that of course they'll remember.
Yeah. I have a theory on that.
Phil, go ahead, Phil.
I think that the next characters that are going to know who he is the Fantastic Four. And I think that's because he has such a strong relationship with the Fantastic Four, even more of a relationship with them than the Avengers. And I just feel like they're going to be the next heroes that either he shows up in their movie or they're going to know who he is.
Oh, what would be perfect though? They're eventually bringing in Deadpool. If we get Deadpool and Spider-Man on the same page, Deadpool just being a fourth wall breaking character just would it would be the perfect way. He just looks in the camera like, do they really think I don't know who Tom Holland is? Like, so yeah, there's a bunch of ways they could do it, but I think it was a good way to end it because Peter is a character who's best when he's up against the wall. And he, for the first couple movies, he had all this support from Tony. He had all this tech on his side. And now we're going to get to see Peter like homemade suit, homemade web shooters again, like just doing it on his own. And I think the next Spider-Man story that they tell is going to be really interesting because of that.
What about the spot where they're all talking about the web shooters? Like, did that come out of you? Does it come out of anywhere else?
Yeah. Oh my God. There was so many great little scenes like that. Like when they were all talking on the Statue of Liberty about the villains they fought, and Andrew Garfield's like, I want to fight an alien. Like he's kind of jealous. That was so good.
How about when he tells him, I'm part of the Avengers. Like, oh, that's so cool. Who are the Avengers?
What is that, a band? Are you in a band?
Yeah.
It's so great. But man, the thing that makes the I've always wanted brothers line so good is because being Spider-Man is lonely. Like there's his experience as a superhero is just so unique. And they could express that because there are no other heroes in their universe. So they can express how lonely it is. But I feel like they've done a great job of expressing that throughout this franchise because they've done it in several different ways. Like when he leaves the other heroes after Civil War in his first movie and he's dealing with all this stuff in New York on the street level and Tony doesn't believe him, it's like, no, like he actually has to do this on his own. Like they're not going to come and help him out. And it was the same thing in the second movie where he's not in New York. He's all the way in another country and he has to handle this on his own. He made a big mistake and nobody's going to come clean it up for him. And then you got this movie where it's like he's basically had to face like, look, like if you make a mistake, nobody's going to come and fix this for you. Tony's not going to come fix it. Tony's gone. Like if your identity's out there, like whatever, just deal with it like the rest of us do. But they don't understand that he's not like them. And so he can't just deal with it. He has to deal with the consequences of people knowing where he lives or, something like someone close to him dying. Like, man, none of the other heroes in their franchise have had to deal with close failures like this, other than maybe Thor. And I feel like having him fail this big, like none of the other Peters have lost their Aunt May. So that's a big deal. And so I just think that the way that they did this was really smart. I think it wasn't just setting him up to do like a reset, but I think it was just having him learn this lesson of like, no, you can't save everybody and you can't live in like this fantasy world of heroes where everybody has a happy ending. Maybe sometimes you're not going to have a happy ending.
What about this notion of he's going to help them? Because I got kind of hung up on this because when he says, I think he's telling MJ or he's telling someone it's not my problem. That's their problem. It's not, I can't concern myself with that. That's them. That's not me. I'm sitting there going, yeah, he's right. Because I agreed with him,
But that is a very Spider-Man-esque lesson because when he said that's not my problem before, his uncle got shot.
Ah, good call.
And
good
that's
call,
the lesson he kind of has to relearn in this movie of, no, you can't just decide that's not your problem. Like you've decided to put on this mask and be a hero. So you have to be better than everyone else.
Wasn't that with Aunt May in this movie? She was the one who's like, look around. This is what we do. We help
right.
people.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, she was basically doing that with the Feast place, which, listen, if they don't introduce Mr. Negative next movie and he doesn't buy Feast, then they set that up. Like, they've got to do that. But, yeah, I just think the way they did this was very smart. Like, I think him not wanting to save the other villains and kind of trying to do the logical thing of leaving them to their fate, I think it just makes a lot of sense. And man, there's so many smart things they do with the other Spider-Man they brought in. Like the fact that Tobey understood what it did to him not being able to save Norman. Just like it's possibly his biggest mistake in those movies. it's the thing that basically ruined Harry's life and ruined their friendship.
Yeah.
And so having him come this far and be like, yeah, I've thought about a way to cure the goblin after all this time, because it cost him. And like, even when he stops him from killing Norman, he's like, no, this isn't going to fix this for you. I've seen what this does.
Yeah, and like you're talking about the lesson that Peter learns from Uncle Ben's death, this kind of suggests maybe there wasn't an Uncle Ben, because he learns the lesson from her and through this movie, not from anything that happened before.
I didn't get that feeling, because I mean, they've basically told us that Ben exists, because like his initials were on his briefcase in the second movie, and
Hmm.
like May clearly knows about Ben. Like, she says, like, even before she gives the line, she got it from somewhere. I assumed in that scene that she got it from Ben.
And
Interesting.
also in the what if, I know the what if stuff is like only semi-canon to some people, but he literally mentions Uncle Ben by name in the what if show.
Yeah, I think he
Very
exists.
true.
I just think they didn't want to just completely rehash
Yeah.
the Ben stuff again.
They basically gave that death and the importance of it to Aunt May instead, which was fine.
And this is out of left field, but we keep saying the name Ben. Do we ever get a Ben Riley in the MCU, or do you think going down the road of the clones is anything that they would even attempt to do? Do you think it's?
I would love a Clone Saga movie.
Hmm.
It depends on how long they have Tom for, though. Like,
it would be tough to do it. But I would absolutely love it.
you know who I wanted to appear in this movie? You were talking earlier, Tom, about how you wanted the guy from the US Spider-Man show.
Yeah.
I wanted the Japanese Spider-Man actor to show up.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
I just for a scene, just like in his big mech robot.
So good. Phil, have you watched that from Disney Plus? That behind the scenes about the Japanese Spider-Man show?
No, but I know that they're putting more and more stuff out there, because I guess he's going to be in the new Into the Spider-Verse.
Awesome.
Uh,
You got to watch it.
That
What's that
actor's
series called, Chris? I can't remember what the name of the series is called.
well, it was Supida Man, because that's how you say spider.
Oh yeah,
in
yeah. But like the
Japanese.
series on Disney Plus, there's a name for it, and I can't remember what it's
Oh,
called.
isn't it just like Marvel Legends or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, you can actually find every episode of the Japanese one for free on Creative Commons.
Nice.
So yeah, if you ever want to watch it, like, it's fully subtitled and everything. The show is ridiculous. So
Oh yeah.
like, I don't know if you guys know how much of the Spider-Man lore they changed.
yes,
It's
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Oh my god, it's ridiculous. He's like, he got bit by an alien spider and given his powers by his spider god, and then his whole thing is that he wants to get revenge for the death of his father, so he's like on a murder rampage. Calls himself the emissary from hell.
Yeah, it's essentially like either a Kamen Rider or like a Super Sentai show with Spider-Man in it.
But what's funny was that show predates most of the Super Sentai stuff. So that show introduced the concept of the giant fighting robot.
Yeah, I wonder if
Wow.
Kamen Rider existed before that. Then
They had some shows about like masked martial artists running around, but none of them had the special vehicles and mechs and stuff like that. So when Spider-Man shut down, those guys all went and worked on Super Sentai, and like season 2 or 3 of Super Sentai is what introduced those concepts to that show.
Phil, you'll have to watch that special. It is great. It gives you so much behind the scenes, and oh, it's so good. It's very
It's so
fascinating.
funny. Did that show cover how the mech suit got stolen halfway through production, so they just had to keep reusing the same footage for the final fight in every episode?
Oh my God. I don't know if they covered that or not.
There's like 20 episodes in a row where the final explosion is the exact same shot.
It's like the classic Voltron. Every time they form Voltron, it's the exact same footage from episode 1 to the end of the series, because they just use the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. But I think what's funny is that like there's this weird history of Spider-Man suits being stolen.
Wow.
So apparently 3 of the suits from the Maguire movies were stolen by some security guard at Warner Brothers or Sony or whatever.
Hmm.
And then one of the Andrew Garfield suits was stolen. The suit from the Japanese one was stolen. And
Wow.
I guarantee you Tom Holland has one of those suits in his closet. Whether he
Oh, I'm
stole it or it was
sure.
gifted to him, I don't know, but I know that Ryan Reynolds stole the Deadpool suit.
And you have to let Ryan Reynolds steal the Deadpool suit. That's a given. Yeah. You don't
Especially
give
when
it
he
to him. You just
shows
let him
up at children's hospitals dressed as Deadpool and
Oh
does
my
good things
God.
with it.
Such a good guy. Such a good guy, man. Um, yeah, so much going on in this film, and even with the time we spent on it, we've just kind of went over the high points and the stuff we loved about it. Phil, do you have a best of moment in this movie that watching it the second time, it either made you emotional or made you pop, or you're like, God, I'm so glad that's in this film.
Man, there are several. It's too many to count. Just as a fan of Spider-Man, a fan of these movies, like I don't care how much I will sit here and say that those 3 movies that aren't that good kind of suck. I've watched them several times. So there's certain
Mm.
things in this movie that I'm just like, oh, of course, like, and they did such a good job of either using lines straight from those movies or putting aspects from those movies here. Like even in the Mirrorverse fight, I didn't notice it until the second time. I was like, they did a train fight scene,
Ah, they did.
and I was like, because I feel like I had a conversation with somebody like right before that movie where I was like, as good as this movie is, like I don't know if any action set piece is as good as that train fight. And then I watched the movie and I was like, son of a the train fight. Um, um, yeah. So it's just this numerous things they've done, but I mean, just that visual of them swinging together for the first time and Tom shooting out the webs to the other 2 Spider-Man and them swinging off him. Come on, man, that was just awesome.
Chris, what about for you? Was there what moments of this movie did you really appreciate? Did there any that stand out for you?
Andrew saving Zendaya and then getting emotional about it
Oh my God,
was
so
really
good.
nice. But yeah, I think Aunt May's death probably was the closest I got to getting emotional.
Yeah.
Just because, I like Marissa Tomei and that was a really well done scene. But there was so many moments in this movie that just made me smile. Just all these little lines and references and interactions. Just Andrew Garfield going to Toby and ribbing him a little, being like, "So you got your suit, or are you going to show up dressed like a cool youth pastor?"
Yeah.
That popped me. I loved it so much, and I just thought that this was the best way for them to do a couple of it felt like this was a combination of that One More Day and a little bit of Spider-Verse, and just mixed with kind of an original story that they're doing as well. So yeah, I personally feel like this is a good sign that we can still look forward to really high quality stuff from the MCU, because I know some people, myself included, I feel like Shang-Chi was a little bit by the numbers. It followed the formula of a Marvel origin story pretty much to the T. And Eternals was Eternals. So I think some people were starting to be like, okay, maybe the MCU's losing steam, but no, Spider-Man, it brought it right back up.
I don't see how people could think that they're losing steam, man, because I feel like none of the Disney Plus shows are bad.
No, but after Endgame, a lot of people were like, where do they go from here? You built up this whole thing for 20 movies, and now are you going to try and do that again? Or what are you going to do? But I think that this movie proved we can still expect good projects from them. And the TV shows, like you said, have all been great. So I really liked the Hawkeye finale. And man, just having Wilson Fisk and Daredevil back in the MCU, or in the MCU officially now.
Listen,
if there's so many things I want them to do.
I've said this before, but there's a scene from Ultimate Spider-Man where Spider-Man gets into a fight with Kingpin for the first time, and he says, "Wait a minute, hold up!" And he takes these cue cards out of his pocket, and he reads these fat jokes to him. They have to do this in a movie. It is so funny. It is hilarious.
Oh my God. That Chris, you mentioned the thing with Garfield when he saved her and he gets emotional. I'm like, I don't know if we need an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man Part 3 because they just gave him closure. They just showed that character, here's your redemption, my friend. You've got it finally. Now you can maybe begin to rest a little bit easier. Maybe now you can sleep at night. You can make a difference. You can still do this the right way. You can still help. Like that. It's talk about giving a character his last bit of redemption. For me, that did it. I choked up during that because I'm like, and people in the theater, because people had, again, like me, had invested years into this stuff. They got it. They totally got it. They didn't have to go, what was that about? They totally got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And MJ asking if he was okay when she noticed that he was crying, like that got me a little bit. But
yeah,
the other scene that I think doesn't get talked about enough is when Toby stops Tom from stabbing Goblin with the glider, and there's no dialogue. It's just him staring Tom down until he understands that this is the wrong move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was so well done because there's nothing you could put in there for dialogue that would have been as effective as Toby just staring at him calmly, like, no, just don't do it.
Well, I mean, we don't need it because we've seen Toby learn that lesson in his movies.
Right.
So he knows what it did. Him letting that robber die and then letting Norman die. And I mean, it wasn't his fault that Norman died, but I do think that he blamed himself for a long time for Norman dying. And he was just like, I couldn't save my best friend's dad. And he was like, I can't let you make this mistake. You're not going to be able to get over this.
And then after he gets stabbed, and Andrew's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh no, it's fine. I've been stabbed before."
Yeah. That was great. Toby does a lot of things in this movie that are very understated. Toby's a really good actor, man. I don't think people give him his credit. And I think he does so many things. I mean, even when he comes out of the portal for the first time, and Ned's Ned's grandma is just like, "Oh, who's this guy?" And he's just kind of like, "Me? I don't know. I'm just a guy." And I think that he just nails like certain parts about Spider-Man. Him just being unassuming of like, "Oh, I don't know." And when you look at Spider-Man in the comics, then he always kind of finds a way to have a girlfriend, and he's kind of like charming, but at the same time, he's still always kind of unsure of himself until he puts the mask on. And I feel like Toby nails that.
Yeah. I think what was cool about this movie was we got 3 very different versions of Spider-Man, because we got the Toby who's like, he's mature, he's well-adjusted, and he's happy in life. And then we get Andrew Garfield, who's like the most depressed he's ever been because he's still beating himself up over Gwen. And then you have like the nervous and anxious Tom Holland version, who's like just starting his journey into adulthood in addition to all this other crap that's been thrown on his plate. And seeing all 3 of them like mixed together, like they did all feel like different versions of Peter Parker, but they didn't all feel like the same character. I thought that was a really interesting balance that I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to capture very well. Like, oh, are they going to make these characters feel anything like each other, or are they just going to feel like 3 disjointed people that all happen to have the same name? But there was like enough similarities and enough differences where I felt they balanced all of them really well.
Yeah. I felt like there was concerted effort to show that these 2 characters have existed before you. They're still Spider-Man, but they had different conflicts. They had to learn different lessons, and they kind of like mentored him in a way of like, don't make the same mistakes that I made. Like I was here before, and again, that's just why I feel like that Tom is the best Spider-Man. Like he did several things in this movie that, like, I mean, just the fact that he led them into battle, like he was like, "No, I've been an Avenger. I can do this," and they followed his lead. The fact that he was the guy that outsmarted Stephen Strange. He outsmarted Otto, right away. It wasn't like it took him all movie to beat Otto. He outsmarted him pretty quick. And I mean, you could say that it was luck, but still, he just did several things throughout this movie that I'm like, yeah, Tom's the guy. The fact that he made, I feel like, the right call at the end of the movie, them basically telling us, and again, this is a nod to the other Spider-Man movie where once they tell us that Gwen is going to Oxford, Gwen is never going to make it to Oxford, right? So
Mm.
in this movie where they're like, oh, we're going to just go to MIT and have a reset. And he's like, yeah, that's going to be our life. And it's like, no, Spider-Man's not going to leave New York. He's not going to have a happy ending in Boston. Like, you just know that going in. So the second they say MIT, it's like, all right, well, something's going to happen with this. And him, it not ending tragic, like they all didn't go to MIT. Him understanding, like, no, I cannot go with you guys. I have to let you guys have this. I got to let you guys be happy without me.
In that scene in the diner, did anybody but me expect that when Ned came in, they would talk for a minute and then she would kiss him and we would find out they're now together? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I kind of, in my head, I was like, what if that happened? Because if they forgot about him as if he never existed, how much time has passed? I mean, is it a week? Is it a month? Is it 6 months? How long has it been? I don't know. I kind of thought, man, that might be an interesting twist. Now he can't do anything. Now he would never come between that because he loves both of them.
Oh man, what if she's dating Flash Thompson in the next movie?
Oh God.
Yeah, I did hear people in the crowd go, "Oh no," when they saw that, like they thought that was going to happen, but I didn't think that was where that was going. But yeah, those last few scenes, like the again, like the third act is going to be what everybody talks about of, all the Spider-Man being on screen together, but they do all of the interpersonal stuff so well in this movie. Only a Spider-Man movie could leave Spider-Man alone with no family and friends on Christmas, and that's a happy ending. Like
yeah.
only Spider-Man can pull that off because it's just such a Spider-Man trope. But just him making that decision and him, like all the subtleties, like she was still wearing the necklace from the last movie that he gave her, and she had the bandage, and once he saw the bandage, he was like, I can't do this. Yeah, it was great. I think that whole thing, and then doing the montage of him creating his own suit, and boy, that final scene of him swinging in the snow is so good.
Yeah. That's a shiny suit too, boy. I liked it.
I like the new suit. I hope they keep it.
Yeah, you could tell it was like slight combinations of both of the suits he had seen Garfield and Maguire wearing. But I think the coolest thing was that they captured almost the exact same look as his apartment from Spider-Man 3. Phil and I have talked about this already. Like, that looked like Toby's apartment. You half expect that one dude to come down the aisle and be like, "Where's the rent?"
Rent? It definitely looked like his apartment from Spider-Man 2 and 3. And then like even the scene of him standing over the grave, it looked very similar to the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2.
When he turns around and sees his father in the deleted scene.
Oh God, that horrible deleted scene. Like that is one of the good scenes out of Amazing Spider-Man 2 when he's standing over the grave and they do this really good montage of him standing there and the seasons keep changing.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So Phil, I usually ask you this question pertaining to the villain's plot and whether or not it holds up for you and whether or not it makes sense. I'll ask you that about the way this movie ended up with the no one knows Peter kind of thing. Did you get hung up on the intricacies of this like a lot of us did with the Avengers time travel stuff? Or are you just going to take this and roll with it? Like, are you questioning it? Does it make sense? Does it work for you? What do you think?
I think they're going to be able to adjust it on the fly. I think that it worked. I think having the movie in that way worked with the themes of the movie, because a big part of this movie is that, when you go off to high school, everybody thinks, we have this idea of what growing up looks like. I'm gonna, go to college. I'm gonna have all my same friends. Me and my girlfriend are gonna stay together forever. All of my family members, my parents are always going to be alive forever. Everything is going to always work perfectly for me. And at the end of this movie, he kind of learned what we all learn once we get out of high school is that, no, you got to grow up. You got to leave certain things behind. And I thought that was a very smart way to end his trilogy in high school.
Chris, what do you think? Does the explanation of all that hold up for you? Are you with Phil? What do you think?
I mean, the fact that we don't have to see the ramifications in the other universes makes it a lot easier to swallow. Because, of course, you can you can start to question, like, well, if they fix the Green Goblin and then send him back to the time before he dies, is he gonna be fine? And does that change Tobey Maguire's whole universe, or does Tobey go back to a completely different universe where
Nope.
he's still dead?
You got to go back to Hulk's explanation of time travel from Endgame, where he goes, "No, when he went back to his time, it doesn't change his timeline. It creates a new timeline."
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a whole weird mishmash, but I think the fact that it's multiverse stuff more than time travel means Marvel still gets to write their own rules.
Yeah.
Plus, it's like I mean, Willem Dafoe was one of the highlights of this movie, so any excuse to have him back.
He's so
like,
good.
And
he's
my
awesome.
God, some of those fight scenes he had with Toby, like, or not Toby, with Tom, like when Tom is literally on his shoulders, just pounding away at his face, and he's just smiling back at him.
Yeah, that spine buster. Oh my God, that spine buster
The
was
spine
ridiculous.
buster through 5 floors.
And then
There
he
were so many wrestling moves in this movie.
There was a power
He
bomb.
just picks him up and
Yes!
straight power bombs him. Like, yeah, that whole fight is so good. I mean, man,
Hawkeye had a German suplex.
yeah, man,
Yeah, there was a spear, there was a takedown. Yeah.
man, that is definitely one of my favorite scenes in the movie, of his spider sense going off and him walking around and trying to figure it out. And then Norman goes right into the Goblin voice, and man, Willem Dafoe is just so good. His acting in this movie is just incredible. All the physical stuff he did was great. Him just like laughing it off while he's getting punched in the face. And let me tell you, if you didn't like Spider-Man 1 because of the helmet and you wanted to see Willem Dafoe, this definitively told us why he needed to be able to emote in that first movie, because being able to see his facial expressions in this movie, it was fantastic. And that final scene where he's trying to goad him into bantering like he usually does, and he's all business, so good.
Yeah. And they gave him the costume. They basically gave him the costume.
They did. They gave him the tattered hoodie and everything. It was great.
Yeah. So I'll hit you guys with this real quick. So do we see any of these actors in the MCU or in any offshoot of the MCU moving forward, or do you think they're all done? The villains or the heroes, either one?
This really felt like an encore for me. It didn't feel like a let's put them back on the table so we can keep using them again. This kind of felt like an encore in a way to celebrate just how great his movies have been, him being Spider-Man. The only thing that was missing, and halfway through the movie, I was like, God, I wish Stan was here. Like, not having a Stan cameo did put like a downer on it, but it just was so good. I mean, we still have that moment of when the first Spider-Man movie came out with MCU, and like they ran the Marvel tag for the studio before the movie, and they played the old Spider-Man theme song. That's just such a great cinematic moment for me.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think? Do you think we get any of the actors back as heroes or villains in any kind of way?
I could see, like, if they do ever do anything with any of them, I could see it being Andrew Garfield, but I think most of these guys, it was just a one-off. Like, I don't think Alfred Molina had to be de-aged for this, and Willem Dafoe is in his 60s now. I mean, I'm sure Jamie Foxx would probably return if the story was good and the paycheck was good, but I'm not sure we need another Electro story.
Did you see that they were talking about possibly giving him his own movie in that one report? And I was like, Sony, please stop. Don't do this. Don't do this, Sony.
They have announced and canceled more Spider-Man spin-off projects than they've made. Like Silver Sable, Black Cat, Sinister Six.
Oh, God.
Like all this stuff. Oh man, we forgot to mention the fact that Andrew Garfield was like, oh man, the craziest villain I ever fought was like a dude in a rhino suit. Like,
yes.
I don't know why that popped me, but it did.
Or his conversation with Max, where he's like, man, you were a good guy. And he was like, man, you're cool. You have that cool suit. You're in Queens.
Yes.
I thought you were a black guy. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry.
He's like, no, there's got to be a black Spider-Man out there somewhere.
Right. See, I kind of feel like Jamie Foxx's character came full circle and he made peace and he was okay. And I'm like, why you want to go mess that up and turn him heel again? Just leave him alone.
Yeah.
Now, you know what I would have loved? So I know they already put Donald Glover in the role as Uncle Aaron, but had they not already written themselves into that corner, Jamie Foxx would have been an outstanding choice to play that character.
Oh, he would have been. That's actually really true. Man, the only other cameo that I would have loved if we got, I think there was a spot where you could have done a Kirsten Dunst cameo. If at the instead of us getting that Venom thing where like we could have had like Toby walking in and like him going, man, MJ, I'm home, and you're expecting like Kirsten to come around the corner, and it's Mayday, and she walks around the corner, and he gives her a hug, and then Kirsten Dunst walks in.
Yeah, like I actually
Interesting.
agree. I thought the one thing that was missing was getting to see the other two Spider-Men back in their universe. Like I wanted the same thing. I wanted him to walk in, MJ and the kids run up and give him a hug, and then I wanted to see Andrew like sitting on top of a building ready to go fight crime with a smile on his face again.
Yeah.
Like I felt like, but the proper send off that they gave them was good. Like Tom giving them a big hug, and which I believe I read that was improvised, that wasn't in the script.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that they got a good ending, but I do wish we would have gotten a little bit more from them post credits. But the stuff we got for post credits, like, yeah, the Tom Hardy thing is what it is, but that Doctor Strange trailer was so nuts.
Man,
That-
awesome.
Yeah, that was great. I do really love Andrew just turning around and going, I love you guys, and just going, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I could keep gushing about this for another hour and a half, I believe, because man, it's just so good. But kids, there you have it. There is Spider-Man Far From Home. No Way Home. Wrong movie. Well, one day we'll cover Far From Home and it'll all make sense.
We'll do the Common album one day. It'll all make sense too.
Yes. There's somewhere out there. There's a 6M anthology album.
Oh my God, them ending the movie with 3 is the magic number. Did anybody else pop for that? I was like, this is a De La Soul movie song at the end of a Marvel movie.
So good. So good. And in fact, I was listening to that song yesterday because it got me wanting to listen to their stuff again. Awesome.
Nice.
Well, Phil, help us take this thing home, man. Give us your last word on Spider-Man No Way Home.
I have been trying to think of my ranking for this movie for a while. I know some people think that we're saying at least that this is the best Spider-Man movie. I don't know if I would say it's the best. I think it's probably firmly second or third. And I think the thing that makes it great is also kind of the thing that makes it not the best, in my opinion, if that makes sense. I feel like this movie is such a celebration of Spider-Man movies that it's not really like its own story in some ways. And it is its own story because it does, wrap up the end of, Peter's time in high school very well. But at the same time, I feel like Spider-Man 2 does such a better job of doing a self-contained story. And I feel like Into the Spider-Verse does as well. But that's not a knock at this movie. This movie is just such a great celebration of Spider-Man movies, man. And it just makes you just so happy about what those movies accomplished. And it is just like such a, like almost a curtain call for these characters and actors. And man, it was just so great to see all of these actors again.
Yeah, agreed. Chris, what do you think, my friend?
I mean, I think this is at least number 2, possibly tied for my favorite Spider-Man with number 2 from Toby. But yeah, it's such a good movie that if you're any level of Spider-Man fan, you're going to enjoy this. And you know what? I'll tell a quick story before we end here. So I have a friend down in Florida who, her life is crazy. She runs a bar and she has like a little kid. So she's just always busy doing something. And she managed to avoid every trailer, every spoiler. Like, she doesn't live her life online like we do. So she knew nothing about this movie going into it other than it was a Spider-Man movie. Wow. And the way she phrased it to me was Spider-Man is her superhero. Like, that's who she's read since she was a little girl. She's seen all the cartoons, watched all the movies, loved all the movies. She even liked the Andrew Garfield ones. So she went into this and had no idea Garfield was showing up, had no idea Toby was showing up, no idea Willem, Otto, any of these other villains were showing up. So she told me that she was basically crying for half the runtime because of how much all this stuff got to her. And I think that right there is just proof that this movie works. Because, like, if you can make a diehard Spider-Man fan, like, cry and feel nostalgic and be happy and all that, then, yeah, the movie's very effective.
Absolutely. And, you know, I again, as we said at the intro of this thing, we gush over Marvel. It is the third M and the 6M. We talk a lot about it, but with good reason. The creators and the brains and the men and women behind this universe make the fans happy. They understand from the jump the reason Spider-Man is popular is because people bought the books. People watched the cartoons. People pushed for him. Stan Lee pushed for him. Stan Lee pushed for these heroes. People watched, they bought, they got attached, they loved. I mean, the comics. I mean, you got to go back to where all this started, kids, is the books. It's the most important part of this whole thing. And you don't just discredit that and say, we're going to do what we want to do. These movies don't have to look like the books. This is for a mature generation. You know, we're going to move forward. They're all going to curse and kill people, and this is going to be great. Cue the hair flip. That's a subtle jab. But no, these men and women understand, look, you dance with the one who brung you. The fans put us here. Let's make them happy. And again, it's not about talking down to the audience. It's not about, fine, you want 3 Spider-Man here, just take it. No, it makes sense. It tugs at your heartstrings. It makes you smile. It makes you cry. It makes you laugh. Everything in between. They just continue to nail it. No, not everything they do is absolutely 100% pitch perfect, but the effort to make it that is there. So even when they fail or fall short, you know the effort was there. They weren't trying to talk down to anybody. I'm telling you, if every other creator-owned or creator universe out there, whether it's in print, TV, or movies, should take a cue from Marvel on how to treat their fans.
I thought about this after watching the movie, and I kind of had the same thought watching Endgame. I feel like the MCU has managed to take that feeling that we all had when we first saw Iron Man as comic readers and make moviegoers feel the same way, because now they have movie continuity. And I feel like this movie succeeds because it has movie continuity, not just comic continuity.
All right. Good call. Excellent way to end it. I think that's perfect. Yeah, it checks all the boxes, kids. If you've seen it, see it again. If you haven't seen it, we just ruined the whole thing for you. Now you should just go see it to see why we're so happy. But yeah, I can't wait to see what happens next. We'll see where they go from here. And if it's half as good as this, I will be a pretty happy fan. And there you have it, kids. That is Spider-Man No Way Home. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.